Hi, everyone. So you probably saw recently that Microsoft and IBM released the source code to MS-DOS 4.00 on GitHub. And this is under the MIT license, which is an open source license and compatible with the GNU General Public License that we use in FreeDOS. But if you've tried to compile the source code release, you may have hit some problems. And I understand it builds fine under MS-DOS, which is, I think, what you'd expect. But under FreeDOS, you have to clean up the code a little bit before you can build it. And the short version of what's going on is that when they put the code into GitHub, GitHub used UTF-8 for encoding and DOS uses code page 437. So here's how to clean it up. First of all, I should say thank you to FreeDOS developer ECM for sharing this fix. What I'm showing here is entirely what ECM did, but I just wanted to share that, yeah, you really can build MS-DOS 4.0 on FreeDOS. Now I'm doing all this on my Linux box at home. I've actually put this into a bash script to automate things, and let me walk you through that. So I've got just a couple of files in here, and we'll get into them as we go there. But first of all, I've got the zip file that I've downloaded from the GitHub with all of the MS-DOS source code in it, and we can run an unzip command to just pull out the MS-DOS 4.0 source code. But I've got this bash script called ms-dos prep.bash that has all of the commands in it. So you can see the first line there. It's going to, if there's any previous directory, it's just going to clean it up. That's what that does. And then here it's going to go ahead and extract the zip file, but only grabbing the version 4.0 of the source. And then it's going to go ahead and go into that directory, and it's going to do a couple of things. So the first thing it needs to do is you've got these three files that got a little messed up with the code page 437 to UTF-8 conversion. So to make that fix, you can run this sed command that will convert the codes back. And so that's what it's doing. It's basically undoing that UTF-8 conversion. Now GitHub also converted DOS, carriage return new line endings to plain new line. So you need to do a fix on that as well. So to do that, you can use the Unix to DOS command, which is right here. And you can do it all on the bat files that are in the archive, the assembly files that are in the archive, the SKL files, as well as a couple of other things as well. And so that's what that find command does. It's going through all of the files in the source tree, and it's running the Unix to DOS command to convert those line endings back to DOS line endings. So I put all that into the script so I can run all of the commands for me. And so let's go ahead and do that now. And so just want to show that everything is set up this way, and I'll just run bash against that ms-dos prep. And you can see that it's now converting all the files, and now I have a directory called msmain that has just the version 4.0 files in it. And there's the source files. All right, so I've also in this directory created a FreeDOS installation. Now this is just a fresh FreeDOS 1.3. I'm just using the plain DOS version, nothing extra. And in fact, I've actually wiped out the fdauto.bat file, so it only sets a path. We'll get there later, but I just didn't need to have anything else in there. This hard drive is just 100 megabytes because it really doesn't need to have that much, right? The sources for this aren't really that big. But first I need to get the source code onto that disk image. And so to do that, I can use a command on Linux called guest mount. And if you don't have that command, you may have to install it as part of the guest fs utils. And so the command line for this, I just got a directory here already called temp ms-dos. Actually, I'm going to use the FreeDOS folder, not that it matters. I'm going to go ahead and run guest mount using my image file, FreeDOS.qcow. Now the guest mount command is pretty good. It can guess a lot of different file formats, and so it'll just do it on its own. And then I'm going to say, look, I want to mount the dev SDA1 equivalent directory or partition in there, which is the first partition. I'm going to put that in temp FreeDOS. And so now we've done that, and it's going to mount that. And now I can see under temp FreeDOS, I now have my bare FreeDOS installation. So let's go ahead and copy all of the source code that we just converted from MS-DOS 4's release into my my virtual disk. And so we'll do a CP -R on the MS-DOS main version 4.0, and then the source directory into temp FreeDOS, and then we'll put it into source. I like to use all uppercase when I put it there, just so it's all consistent, even though it's really case insensitive. So there we go. That's done. Now I also have a setenv.bat file. Now you have to edit one in the source code release, and they do provide one for you, but I just figured it's just good to have everything in there. So this is what my setenv script looks like. And so what it's doing is it makes sure we have a couple of important build variables cleared, and then it sets our country, and then it sets the root, and then it sets some important variables for the lib, the init, the include, and to make sure we have the right path set. Again, this is all what ECM had used in his fix, and just wanted to share that there. So let's go ahead and copy this setenv.bat file to my FreeDOS installation. So again, that FreeDOS is under temp FreeDOS, and so we'll do CP on my setenv into temp FreeDOS. All right, so when I'm done, I can just go ahead and unmount it. So I'm going to do guest unmount temp FreeDOS, and now I can safely use my virtual machine. So just to clear the screen here and remind ourselves what we have, we can now run QEMU on that FreeDOS virtual machine. So we'll do QEMU system i386, we'll enable KVM, and that way it won't take a day and a half to compile this. We'll set the memory to 32, because why not? And then we'll set the HDA to be FreeDOS Q cow 2. And so that will go ahead and run my QEMU window, which I'll go ahead and maximize so we can see everything. And I'll zoom to fit. And it's going to go and boot that. And as I said, I've loaded my own FD Auto, and so just to show you that, so dir, and then just to show you what's inside my FD Auto.bat file, is just setting basic path. It really is empty, but the original fdconfig.sys, I'm still using the default from FreeDOS 1.3. And so just showing you there that there's just nothing special loaded here to do that. Let's go into the source directory, and they have a batch file here that gives you some instructions. And if we just run me, you'll see it actually is too long. And so it's too big to actually run on the run here. So we'll need to do mode CO80 50. That's a 50-line display. And now we can run me to actually look at what's inside there. And so it's basically giving us some instructions about what we need to do. So the first thing that it's going to say is that we need to set up the build environment, and it uses the setenv.bat file that's been provided, so you can just edit that. And of course, as I said, I've already made my own setenv that will set my environment for me, so I don't actually have to modify that live in this video. After that, you run the nmake utility, and that will build the entire source tree. If you need to ignore build errors, which we don't need to in this case because it will build correctly, you can use nmake -i. So after that, when we're done, we'll need to then copy everything into a separate directory where that will have everything collected in one spot, and we'll do that later on. But first, this might be a little bit small, so let's just go ahead and set the mode back to 25 lines. And that'll be a little bit easier for YouTube to display. So again, we'll just type nmake. And the first time I run this, oops, probably should be, I didn't set my setenv. And so there's my setenv. And going into source, and then I just need to run nmake. Now, the first time I run it, I sometimes can get an error, but here it's running just fine. And so this will take a little bit of time. This will take about 2.5 minutes to run. And so while it's doing that, let me just make a couple of comments. So I just want to say it's really cool that Microsoft and IBM have released this classic version of MS-DOS. So I just want to start by saying thank you to everyone in both organizations that made this happen. Actually, you read the blog post that's been posted. It also came from some other organizations as well. So I just want to thank everybody who's made this happen. I actually understand that Scott Hanselman at Microsoft was really the big force to make this release happen. So again, just thank you everybody there. I think it's just really important to recognize that Microsoft is embracing open source. And if you've been around FreeDOS for a while, you might remember about 10 years ago when Microsoft partnered with the Computer History Museum. They released a copy of the source code to MS-DOS 1 and 2. And well, I think it was well-intentioned, what they were doing. They unfortunately used a license that was definitely not open source, very much not open source. In fact, the license was essentially look but do not touch. It even had a clause in there that said if you basically studied the MS-DOS source code, you couldn't work on another DOS, and that is very bad. So we had to make a rule at that time that clarified if you looked at the MS-DOS source code, you could not contribute to FreeDOS after that. Although we decided as a community it would be okay to contribute to the utils section or something like that, because anything that was not part of the original MS-DOS. But you definitely couldn't contribute to, if you looked at the MS-DOS source code, you couldn't contribute to the FreeDOS kernel or FreeCom, which is our command com shell, or any other base programs, because those were meant to reproduce the original DOS behavior. So if you had insights to what MS-DOS was doing, you couldn't contribute those insights to FreeDOS. And so you could do something else, but you couldn't do part of the main stuff in FreeDOS. And so I know they made a lot of people unhappy. I remember we had one university student who was learning about DOS, and he learned about FreeDOS, and he wanted to contribute to the base stuff, but said right up front that he'd studied the MS-DOS source code in the Computer History Museum, and we had to turn that away because that meant that you couldn't contribute to the FreeDOS base. Had to work on something else, but they didn't want to work on something else, and I wanted to work on the FreeDOS base. And I know it's not fun to get excluded like that, but we did all that to protect the FreeDOS project. Now, fortunately, in 2018, after Microsoft acquired GitHub, Microsoft re-released the original MS-DOS source code under an open source license, and this time it was MS-DOS 1.2.5 and MS-DOS 2, and both of those were released under the MIT license. And the MIT license is an open source license. In fact, better than that, the GNU folks say that the MIT license, they call it the expat license, is compatible with the GNU GPL. So yeah, you can copy code from an MIT licensed project and use it in a GNU GPL project. And that was great. But you have to keep in mind, of course, you can't really copy and paste assembly code here. And FreeDOS has a much different structure than MS-DOS because it was developed independently over many years. And so there it's done compiling over many years by a bunch of developers who didn't have access to the original MS-DOS source code. So those old MS-DOS versions were, of course, very old, and MS-DOS 2 was the first version that supported directories. And so all that's kind of a way to say FreeDOS was already light years ahead of those older, MS-DOS versions. But this release of MS-DOS 4 is pretty significant. It's already under the MIT license, as I said. So it's open source, compatible with the GNU GPL. But just to keep expectations in check, this is an old MS-DOS kernel. The FreeDOS kernel is still way ahead of it. Our compatibility level is DOS 6. So you're not going to see, this MS-DOS 4.0 kernel replace the FreeDOS kernel anytime soon. But, it's to be decided later on in terms of, what other stuff might be pulled from the MS-DOS source code to be reused, or probably more likely implemented in FreeDOS. Because again, FreeDOS is developed differently. FreeDOS is mostly C with some assembly, and MS-DOS the other way around. It's pretty much all assembly with a little bit of C. So it's going to be not something you can just copy and paste, but you have to examine what's happening in MS-DOS and implement that in FreeDOS. So anyway, now that MS-DOS is finished building, we can actually copy everything using that copy command. And so if I just do a make dir on, we'll say 4, so it's MS-DOS 4. And now we can do cpy on /4, and that will copy all of my stuff over to the 4 directory. And so that's just going to copy everything into one directory. So it's all been collected. Now, if you're trying to run anything, you're going to get an error. Let me go into the 4 directory. And so if you're trying to run anything, you will get an error, right? So let's just run the command com program. So we can run command com, and you're going to get incorrect DOS version, but that's okay. We can actually fake another DOS version using the callver command and in FreeDOS. And so we have that command because sometimes you might have an old third-party DOS application that requires a certain DOS version to run. And so you can use callver for that. And so we use it here. We can use it here, of course, to run MS-DOS command as though it were MS-DOS 4. And so we can do callver 4.00, and we can just run command.com. And there it is. We're now running the new, or really old, MS-DOS 4 that we just built. And I'll mention, of course, some programs don't work because FreeDOS does some things differently internally, and the MS-DOS kernel is, probably doing some things differently. And so these MS-DOS commands are using some internals in a special way. But if you made a bootable system from this, you'd have a full MS-DOS 4, and that should all work. Again, ECM has a fix for that. You can see that in a news item on our website with a link to the fix using NASM. But here are some things you can do just to kind of show that, yeah, we really are doing something in MS-DOS 4. Now, first of all, we start with the basics, right? We can run the ver command. That'll tell us what version we're running on. Of course, we saw it up above. It's running on version 4.0. So we definitely know we're running on 4.0. Now, our environment is still set up with the FreeDOS stuff, right? So if I do set, you can see that it's showing some FreeDOS paths up there. And so we can run, for example, set the path so that way we know we're only running programs from this directory because we're in the 4 directory. So we'll do path and then C4. Right, so there we go. Now I'm in the 4 directory. And if we wanted to, we could also set the other stuff in there as well. The com spec, for example, we could do set com spec to be C4 command.com, because that's the command com. We can set the doster, set doster to, again, the C4 directory. And so we can set our environment to match what we'd expect to have in an MS-DOS 4 environment, at least where all the programs live. And so we can actually see in our directory all the different programs that we have. A little bit long, so we'll do dir/w. Right, so there we go. There's all of our different programs that come with MS-DOS 4, or at least provided with the source code. Now, one new command in MS-DOS 4 was the mem command. That shows you the amount of memory that you had in your system. There it is. We can see how much memory we have in our system. And yeah, the fdisk program even runs. So we can run the fdisk program. And there it is, the MS-DOS 4 fdisk program. Now I don't want to change anything, so I'll just show the partitions in here. So we'll do 4, and that'll show the partitions. And there it is. There's my 100 megabyte virtual disk that I used to build or to install FreeDOS and then build the MS-DOS source code. And so I don't want to do anything to my hard drive. So I'll just do escape to get out of that. Let's edit a file. And so let's do edlin. And we'll just edit the, let's do like the back in the root directory, we'll do a file called t.txt just because it's a test file. And there we go. We're now in edlin. So we're told it's a new file. And so we can insert a few lines using the I command. And there we are. We're adding some new lines. And we'll just say, this is a test. I'm using MS-DOS 4.00. The edlin editor is pretty cool. And when I'm done, different than the FreeDOS edlin, you actually have to do Control-C. That is kind of scary because normally that would abort a program, but actually here that's the expected command code. So you just do Control C. That brings me back here. We can list the contents of our file. We have 3 lines in there. So just do L, lowercase l, and that'll show you that we've got 3 lines in the file. When we're done, we can just save and exit with the E command. That'll save and exit. And yeah, that's that. And so remember I mentioned that some commands don't work. For example, the type command I think is doing something on the back end. And so if I do type on t.txt, I get this extended error 1, which means that the function number is invalid. So it's probably doing something using an internal DOS function specific to MS-DOS 4. It doesn't work under the FreeDOS kernel, and that's fine. But the file is definitely there, right? Because again, we can use edlin on t.txt, and we can list it and see that, yeah, we definitely have stuff in there. By the way, we can add something to that. So we can do, let's do something before line 3. We'll do 3i, and then we can add something in here that says, this is the new line 3, and then do Control C on that. And then we can list out the contents, and there it is. There's our new line 3. So we can, save and exit with the E. And so we definitely know that we can definitely see the file, read the file. It's just that the type command is giving us an error on that. That's fine. But we can still, read from standard input. So for example, the sort command. And so we can just do the sort command, and we can read from standard input. And so we can say, all right, well, this is a test. And then we'll say ZZ, this should be the last line, and then AA, this should be the first line. And so when I do Control Z, it will then sort those 3 lines, and we should see AA occur first, ZZ should occur last, and the middle line will be this as a test. And so Control Z. And then there it is. There's AA, and then this is the test, and then ZZ. So sort is definitely working fine as well. Most commands, of course, do work as well. Nothing wrong there. For example, we can, I have a, we'll do a dir on t.star. Since I edited the t.txt file, I also have this backup file that I don't need anymore, and so we can do del on on back. And so now I've deleted I want to use the up arrow. I kind of missed using the up arrow to go command history. So I actually have to type the command again, like our primitive forebears might have done. And so dir / t.star, and there it is. We've deleted the backup file. So now we have just the txt file left. Oh, and by the way, you can actually use, the find command to find lines in the file. So the t.txt file had a test line in there, and so we can do a find on the word test on t.txt, and there it is. There's the one line that has the word test in it. And so it's just sort of demonstrating some of the commands you can run under MS-DOS 4. By the way, the tree command has been around since MS-DOS 3.2, and so it shows basically what the directory structure or directory tree looks like. Running tree in this directory doesn't really show much because there are no subdirectories. But if you can run the tree command against something like the FreeDOS directory, and that will see all the stuff there. So we'll do tree on c:/FreeDOS. And there it is. We can see the tree of all the stuff that lives inside FreeDOS. So anyway, that's just a quick tour of, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but just a quick tour of building MS-DOS 4 on FreeDOS and running that MS-DOS to try it out. And so to exit this MS-DOS command com, we just need to use the exit command. And now we're back to the FreeDOS command com. And that's it for MS-DOS 4. What did you think of this video? Let me know in the comments below. And thanks, by the way, to everybody who supports me on Patreon. You really do make a difference. With your support on Patreon, you give me some free time away from my consulting, so I can make videos and do other things like this, as well as keep the website updated and do other FreeDOS stuff. Anything helps, so thank you if you support the channel that way. Visit our website, join us on Facebook, follow us on Mastodon, and consider supporting me on Patreon. Thank you.